Hi everyone, welcome back to Brookdale Farm. Today I thought I would just show you through our salt affected area. Our farm has a very small, luckily, area that's affected by salt. This is where over time, because of clearing, the water table comes up and dissolves all the salt out of the soil and brings it to the surface. Over time, as the water evaporates off the surface, the salt is left behind and gradually forms a thicker and thicker crust. Nothing will grow there very well then after that. So this is the same piece of land the day we were looking at the property, and you can see how bare it is. You can see the white salt crust on the surface. There is nothing growing here and it looks pretty awful. This was probably, I think, about 6 years ago that this photo was taken. So we have put in a fair amount of work to regenerate this area. This was the first spot we planted. These plants here are all old man saltbush, and these these will grow in bare salt scald. They're an amazing plant. I think we put in 70 or 80 the first year we started, and we've been doing a lot of work since then. Mum and Dad and my wife have done a fantastic job regenerating this, and we put in, the aim is to turn this back into useful land. This will never be cropping land again. If we cleared all of this, it would just go back salty again in just a few years. So this will never ever be suitable for cropping. And we don't, the intention is not to clear it. The intention is to plant things that will grow in here that the sheep and cattle can eat. So in summer, when we have a dry year or a drought type year, this will be a nice little food bowl here. Now the previous owner fenced this and planted all of these trees along the back that you see, and this row along the front here. This stopped the salt going any further, and I'm very grateful to them for doing that. Otherwise this small patch would have been much bigger. So some of the plants, the other plants we have been putting in, this one here is a clover. It's called Neptune Messina. It hangs on quite late in the season. This one's finished flowering. I'm sorry I didn't get here a week or so ago to film it then, but you can see on it all the seed pods that are starting to form. This produces a vast amount of seed. The seed is a really high protein feed for the animals, but also we want some of the seed to scatter so that it grows more of the clover next year. So along with planting things in here, we've also put down a lot of straw. Now this helps to stop the evaporation of the surface water and helps stop the salt being left behind, and it also helps stop the erosion. So we have erosion channels here. This one has filled in a huge amount due to slowing the water down and stopping it just racing through here as quickly as it used to. So we put down just about any organic matter we can find as a mulch. This is branches off the old man saltbush. Up here we've got old newspapers that are rotting down, and just all of this helps to put carbon back in the soil. Here we've got pea straw. This is wheat straw. We also were very lucky to get a whole bundle of mulch out of a cattle feedlot. So we put ute loads and ute loads of that through this area as well. This is the old man saltbush, and you can see it starting. These are the remains of the flower heads. So there are male and female bushes. The females get the seed on. So I'm not sure which one this is. We'll wait and see. I suspect this one might be one of the males, and this is the flower that pollinates them. But these are quite happy, and they're producing bucket loads of seeds for us that Mum has been growing up for me. This one down here is a river saltbush. It's a lot shorter bush, but it spreads out, and as it puts out these runners, everywhere it hits the ground, it puts down a set of roots and starts a new plant. So if we came through here and with a shovel and broke all of these branches off, we would find that they would all keep growing because they've all got roots, and it just keeps spreading. The sheep really like this one. This one's quite highly palatable to them. This is blue bush, and it's not looking terribly happy right at the moment, but this is a native bush to the area. I think it might be, it's from around this area anyway, and this is a great sheep feed too. This is an acacia saligna. Saligna is from the Latin meaning salt, so these seem to grow. I hadn't come across them as being used in saltland regeneration until quite recently, so we've put quite a few in. This one looks quite happy. These are also a really good sheep feed. Years ago we had a big paddock with lots of these in, and we had a bit of a tough year with not enough feed for the sheep, so we were cutting branches off these for the sheep feed. And every time the sheep heard the chainsaw start up, the whole mob of them would come galloping towards us to get the branches that we were cutting for them. I think this one is a silver saltbush, and just look at all the seed that this one's getting on it. This is fantastic. So we'll be able to pick these and spread them out for next year, and hopefully get a whole bundle more of these growing. We have this waterway down through the middle of this area, and it spends a lot of its time dry, or it used to spend a lot of its time dry, with just bare salt crust in here. This was highly saline water. Dad has started building these leaky weirs for me. So these help slow the water down, which means the silt gets deposited out on the uphill side of the weir. Because the water speed has slowed down, it can no longer carry the silt and the sand and all the stuff that has eroded from further upstream. You can see some of the straw and stuff too that has washed off and been brought down here. There's a gentleman in the eastern states called Peter Andrews who pioneered, or was one of three people really who pioneered the use of leaky weirs. So once you have slowed down the silt and started silting up your eroded area, the water sits in this silt and is absorbed back into the floodplain more. And so downstream from these leaky weirs, instead of the water coming down in one big rush and then disappearing in about 3 days' time, we get the water seeping back out of the floodplain. This is only a very tiny example of a floodplain, but the water will now seep out of here until mid-February, which means that we can keep green stuff growing in here much longer. Also, as part of this, it helps to push the salt back down into the ground where it originally came from. And so this water every year gets a little bit fresher. Down here you can see how bad the erosion was. So this is almost knee deep. This has silted up too. Because we've slowed the water above this has actually filled in and started to silt up as well. This was probably another 200 millimeters deep. And you can see our small leaky weir here with some bales of straw on either side of it as well, and just how much how much of the silt we are holding up and stopping that erosion, just washing everything downstream and out to sea. Once once the plants are established, the shrubs are established, and these then start putting out a fair bit of mulch themselves, we then start getting the grasses growing back as well. So these haven't been planted here. These are seeds that have washed down, come down in the air, or come in the straw. The straw always has seeds in it from wherever it was baled up, and so we don't even have so many bare patches between the salt bush anymore. Through this area here, we've also put in a couple of different pasture mixes and about 10 different species of clover. This one has finished flowering now. I think this is probably the arrowleaf, although the arrowleaf has two different types of leaves, and this is not the typical arrowleaf, but it is one of the variations of arrowleaf. So these are all the flowers from it. It's grown really nicely this year, and it will be setting seed very soon. So this is one clover plant here. It's got huge big thick stems. You do get in the way sometimes. So this is great. We could almost cut this stuff for hay if we had a little bit more of it, but there's a huge amount of vegetation bulk there when you thicken this up. We've got a nice carpet of clover heading off up in that direction there. So it's really great to see the clovers taking off in here. These are a melaleuca tree. I'm not sure which variety, but they're commonly called a saltbuster. These were planted by the previous owners, and they never looked very happy. They were small and stunted. And we started giving them a little bit of fertilizer, and they're still small and stunted, but they're certainly looking a lot happier now. This one is covered in flowers at the moment. The bees are hanging around here and are very, very happy with this. This one over here is often covered in ladybirds. The ladybirds love this tree as a bit of a nest and a home, because there's so many little spots in here they can hide. Ladybirds are a really important predator. They actually eat a lot of the bugs that we end up having to otherwise spray for because they're wrecking our crops. So it's really good to have a good population of ladybirds around here. We have quite a number of different types of rhododias in here as well. This one is a creeping salt bush. The aim here is to put as many different varieties of plants in as possible, because in different areas some will grow a lot better than others. This is a tiny little olive tree. We planted these as really, really small seedlings last year, and they survived last summer, and now they're starting to look like they're going to grow and take off. Olives are great for dropping the water table down, and they're also a really good sheep feed. They're fairly salt tolerant as well. So as they grow up into big trees, the sheep will come and chew at the bark, and everywhere that they chew at the bark, the olives will put out sort of suckers or more branches, and the sheep can just keep chewing away at the fresh leaves and the bark. So this is another good thing for getting the sheep and cattle through the dry seasons. This clover here is a Persian clover. Once again, we've got a great little carpet of this forming through here. The flowers have all finished on this one too, just about. And it looks like we're going to get bucket loads of seed from it. I think this one is a burr clover. So each of these heads will form into a little burr that does tend to stick in the sheep's wool and things like that. But the seed is encapsulated in the little burr on them. So all of these seeds are really high protein, and when the sheep start eating them, they put on weight really quickly. This area up here was also absolutely baked dry and hard, and I thought it would take us years to get anything growing in here. But you can see the salt bush is all looking quite happy, and the erosion trenches are starting to fill in as well. These plants here are called Tagesasti or tree lucerne. They're generally a more sandy soil type plant. They do grow in Kalamunda in the Perth Hills as well, and that has quite hard clay soil similar to what we've got here. These seedlings did come from Kalamunda, but we've been having a lot of trouble getting them to grow up here. All the ones we planted have died, and these two then sprung up from, I think, some seeds we spilt on the ground. So these are looking really good. Because this one here is growing so well and has started producing seed, we'll collect these seeds and we'll try and propagate these. It's always good to use seeds from the local area if you can, because you know those plants are going to grow there. This is a pistachio tree, and these are a really good sheep feed too, and they're supposed to be a really hardy, relatively fast growing tree. This one we've tried watering over summer. It never does particularly well. This one's probably 4 or almost 5 years old now, and it's only sort of head height. But it's got some fantastic new growth on it at the moment. What happens is in summer the parrots attack it and chew it back quite badly, and any of its new growth just gets burnt off because the sun is too hot. Hopefully once it gets a little bit bigger, it will be sort of big enough to take off and get its roots down into some water a bit more. In here amongst the grass, we can just see this is another Acacia saligna. This is a prostrate one. So instead of standing up tall like that one just over there, it's supposed to just creep along the ground. It's a bit buried in the grass at the moment, but these ones don't seem to grow particularly well in this area either. This one's getting on for 4 years old too, and it doesn't matter whether we weed it and water it and fertilize it, it never grows particularly fast around here. They're just starting to get going now that they're a few years old, but they've taken a really long time to establish. This grass that we have here is Puccinelia. It was a very common grass 30 years ago for regeneration purposes. It's become quite hard to get the seeds for now. Nobody really seems to be growing it. So we were very pleased when we found a couple of plants here, and it's just been spreading and spreading, and this is the best I've ever seen it growing. We've got clumps of it here and clumps over there. Once again, 3 years ago this was bare salt scald through here. So this is doing a really good job of regenerating this area. These plants here, it disappears into the grass a little bit, are eremophilas. They like to have their feet out of the water a little bit, so they're not so good in the waterlogged areas, but we plant them just back from the creeks a bit, and they grow really well up here, and they survive through summer amazingly well. Some eremophilas are really good sheep feed, and some are actually poisonous, so you have to be a bit careful which variety of eremophila you plant if you're intending to use it for stock purposes. Here we have some native mulga. These have only just gone in this year, so it'll be interesting to see how they go, but at the moment they all seem to be growing quite well. They're only small at the moment. They went in as tube stock, but they're all looking pretty good at the moment. We have a small saltwater creek that runs right through the middle of our property, which is a lovely little creek with trees down either side of it. Now we've started to fence this creek line to rehabilitate it too, and along the side of it, in the shade of the trees, the old man saltbush and the river saltbush down here just take off and grow so well. I was really surprised when we threw a couple of them in, not really thinking they would grow that well down here, and ignored them. And suddenly we looked across one day from the other side, and there they were, popping their heads up, looking so happy and healthy. These have been really great down here. Look at this beautiful clover here. This is called crimson clover, and it's got a lovely flower on it. It stands up quite high. It produces quite a lot of vegetable matter, and this one is one of the ones that appears much later in the season than the rest of them. So this is going to stay green for hopefully another month or so, while it finishes off its seed heads. So that will give us a green feed sort of through to mid-November with any luck. So yeah, this is one we've just put in this year, and it's I really like it. I think this is a fantastic clover. So it's always great in pasture to have a big variety of different types of plants. So we've got several different types of clover here, and it all germinates and grows through different stages of the season. This is ryegrass here. So some clovers germinate quite early, or some of the pasture mixes germinate quite early on in the season, so you get green feed early, and they are a winter active pasture mix. Some of them are much later, so you get green pasture through to almost January with some of the different types of clovers, and this is really important for the stock to have a good quality green pasture for as long as possible. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little video about what we're doing to try and regenerate some of the areas of our farm. I hope you've learnt a little bit, and I hope to see you again next time. Thanks, bye.